call the meeting to order for the Oxnard City Council Public Works and Transportation Committee. And Madam Clerk, can you please take the roll?
Member Valenzuela.
Present.
Member Zaragoza.
Here.
Chair Perrello.
Here.
The agenda for this meeting was posted in the City Hall Bulletin Board on May 2nd, 2023.
And we'll have Roberto read the Pledge of Allegiance, lead the Pledge of Allegiance, and a moment of silence for recently lost lives.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Thank you. Madam Clerk, are there any statements you'd like to read?
Not at this time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any, next item, public comments on items not on the agenda? Do we have any public comments for items not on the agenda?
Chair Perrello, we do not have any speakers in person or virtually for this item.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Next item is the consent agenda, the approval of the minutes. I will be abstaining from this because I was not here, but the Public Works and Transportation Committee approved the minutes for April 25th, 2023, regular meeting as presented. Do we have any changes, corrections, or additions?
No, but move approval.
Second.
Can we take a roll, please?
Member Zaragoza.
Yes.
Member Valenzuela.
Yes.
Chair Perrello.
Abstain. Thank you.
Thank you. Motion carries 2-0.
The next item, I think it's 201, but okay. The next item, reports. Public Works Department, Public Project Agreement 323-00389 with Aquatech Services Incorporated for on-call backflow assemblies testing, maintenance, repair, and replacement services. Specification PW 23-72R. The recommendation. The Public Works and Transportation Committee recommends the City Council approve and authorize an agreement with Aquatech Services for a total amount not to exceed $500,000 for a 3-year term for on-call backflow assembly, testing, maintenance, repair, and replacement services. There is a video. Due to Measure M, we're not able to present it. We have Joseph Mercanico here if there are any questions. And Madam Clerk, do you have any public comments on this item?
Chair Perrello, we do not have any public speakers in person or virtually for this item.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, Joe, I was reading an excellent report, by the way, the video, but by understanding, of course, that this backflow prevention device is really important to protect our potable water system, and from contamination and any pollution due to the backflow events. So my understanding is that we have over 10,700 devices, throughout the city, and Aquatech, in my understanding, is probably one of the most responsible bidder on this item, because I think he's been helping us out for the last 10 years, on this item. And I'm sure that all of us have backflow devices at home, for our sinks and et cetera, But can you share a little bit more about what you're doing and how important it is really for the public to understand that?
Sure, Mayor, it would be my pleasure. So with a distribution system, we're constantly putting water into that system under pressure and delivering it to our customers all across the city. So when we give it to places that have additional pumping or head pressure, then if they do work with that water, it becomes stagnant or has any kind of water quality issues with it. If there's let's say a sheared hydrant or something in the system where all of a sudden there's a pressure loss in the system, then the area close to that sheared hydrant would drop in pressure and it would back siphon the water from those businesses or that bad water quality area into the distribution system. So the backflow devices are a protection for the distribution system mostly from commercial and businesses that do certain chemical processes and things like that, like metal plating companies and so it's a very important thing and program. The devices have to be tested annually. If they're not functioning properly when they're tested, they have to be repaired. So they're really our first line of defense if there's any disruption, main breaks in the system that would create a lower pressure in the distribution system and allow water to come from the customer services side to come back into the distribution system.
One more thing, Mr. Chairman. The NIFB, what does that mean, NIFB?
Oh, it's not inviting, the notice of inviting formal bids.
Ah, okay, well, see. Yeah. If you don't know, you don't know. Thank you, sir.
Any questions? Thank you very much. I appreciate the presentation. A couple of points, and you did cover it. There are, as the mayor said, over 10,000. Some residential houses have faucets that attach to that go outside. And some residential houses have small backflow devices on those faucets. Are we testing residential units or simply commercial and business units?
I need to clarify that a little bit. So the city has a certain number of backflow devices that it is responsible for. And we have a backflow specialist internally that takes care of the testing on all of those devices. But citywide, we have over 10,700 of them. It's way too many for one person to be able to do. Plus, whenever these are tested and they need to be repaired, and it could be larger diameter services, et cetera, we need to have someone out there and do it. So that's why we need the on-call service to take care of the large volume and the rapid need for a larger device that needs to be repaired or replaced.
Along those lines, if we tested every day, it's about a little over 29 units per day that we would have to test 365 days a year. And I appreciate the fact that because it said that they have to be tested annually. And I definitely see why we have to have a consultant, or have to have somebody help us. The other part that I would like to appreciate and thank everybody involved in this, human resources, business, whoever, when we apply for these jobs, I'd like to read the paragraph from the staff report. A total of 87, a lot of people assume that there's been some negative comments at past meetings, not this, but at council meetings, that Friends may be getting jobs. Directly out of the staff report, page 8. A total of 87 notices were sent directly to contractors that perform this work and have the appropriate licenses for the NIFB, which is the bidding as the mayor and you explained. The NFB was also posted on Ediboard, Public Purchase, Dodge Analytical, Tri-County Reprogramics, Bid America, and advertised in Vita newspaper, which is the local paper of record. Despite receiving only one responsive bid, staff recommends moving forward with the contract because the services are essential to maintain safe drinking water, and the contractor has performed these essential services for the city for over 10 years. As noted above, there are limited vendors in Ventura County offering the service. And factually, 2 people bid, but 1 was not responsive. And because the bidding has been questioned by some people that have nefarious goals in my mind from the citizens, could we get the city attorney to explain what a non-responsive bid is? Please.
Sure. A non-responsive bid is one that does not fulfill all the requirements listed in the notice inviting formal bids. So it could be they've left off a bond document, they didn't appropriately categorize the units per price, they left off a material item that makes it impossible for us to accept their bid. More than likely, it leads to a materiality. So the leaving off of something within the bid obviously would change the price or the outcome of that person's bid. So we reject it for that reason.
Thank you very much. And the reason this particular thing is important to me is that also we check the Federal Occupation Safety and Health Administration, OSHA. for any problems with the bidders. Years ago, in this council chamber, there was a contract that was awarded for a pipeline job. And that pipeline job had a fatality further south by that operator. But because he appealed it, there was no record of a fatality for this operator. Members of the operating engineers and the laborers came here and brought that to our attention. And I really appreciate that we check in these things because it was a serious matter and this council took appropriate action. And lastly, it states that with the work being done, right out of your staff report again, staff will work closely with the neighborhood councils who represent the communities where the work will be done. Can you explain a little bit how that will work? Will there be regions or areas, quadrants of the city we're going to tackle, or is it neighborhood by neighborhood?
It's really neighborhood by neighborhood. So when we go out and work with the contractor on the area that they're going to test the devices in, and I'd like to just clarify a point, and that is that as the city, we have areas that we irrigate landscapes and parks, et cetera. For those type of areas, we have the city-owned backflow devices. And then for commercial businesses and for residential, as you mentioned, those are private devices. So, you know, I just want to make the distinction in between the private devices and our devices that we own as a city.
Do the private devices have to be checked annually?
Oh, yes. Yes, it's a requirement in the Title 17 Code of Regulations, State of California, as well as Safe Drinking Water Act. There's numerous requirements that we have, our operating permit for water.
Thank you for bringing that difference to our attention.
Sure, and just to clarify too on your question, yeah, so we have to go out to different areas and do the testing. And so we want to, because these are on private services, et cetera, we want to notify the customers so that they know what we're doing out in the area.
Okay. Thank you. Do any of the questions? And Madam Clerk, no one is called in for a comment?
Chair Perrella, we do not have any public speakers in person or virtually for this item.
Thank you very much. What is the recommendation?
Need a motion to approve?
Second.
Okay. Please vote.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you very much.
Motion carries 3-0.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda, Public Works Department again, subject, Senate Bill 1, it's commonly referred to as SB 1, Local Streets and Road Maintenance and Rehabilitation Account, and common reference RMRA. Project list for fiscal year 23-24. The recommendation, it's a two-part recommendation, that the Public Works and Transportation Committee recommend that the City Council adopt a resolution to, number 1, adopt the fiscal year 23-24 project list for Senate Bill 1, proposed projects that will be funded in part or solely from the road maintenance and rehabilitation account revenues, and number 2, authorize the city manager to take whatever actions are necessary and appropriate to carry out the purpose and intent of the resolution. Again, there's a Measure M. Due to Measure M, there's a PowerPoint presentation. We're not going to see it, but we do have Mr. Michael Wolf, Public Works Director. Do we have any questions? And before we start, Madam Clerk, are there any public comments on this?
Chair Perrella, we do not have any public speakers on this item virtually or in person. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any questions on this?
Yeah, Michael, my understanding that SB1 monies can only be used for certain projects. Like, for example, it was mentioned here in the presentation is neighborhood street resurfacing and also the arterial streets. We just can't use that money anyplace other than those items. I mean, those certain streets. And one of the things that was mentioned in the report was PEI and PMS and PSI and so forth. Can you kind of explain what PEI, PMS, and PCI is or are?
Sure. Good evening, Chair and committee members. As you stated, Mr. Mayor, the SB1 requirements and guidelines have certain restrictions on where these funds can be used, and this is part of the transparency that SB1 provides or requires, that we identify the locations that we propose to spend these funds on. And so, depending on your citywide pavement condition index, it also changes what you can use these funds for. But those guidelines are written in the SB1 governances. Some of the acronyms that we use in here are our pavement management program, our PNP, or our pavement management system, which is our PMS. That's typically referred to as referencing our software system that we use. The PCI is Pavement Condition Index. We love acronyms, of course. And I think that was the 3 acronyms that you asked. And our CIP is our Capital Improvement Program.
Yeah, and I think one of the measurements that are used on the system is some of the, it measures the condition of the streets, you know, and it talked about crack/deficiencies and patterns and alligator cracking and block cracking and weathering and et cetera. And I think you might have shared too all the work they've done too, you know, with the past SB1 and lastly, I think my understanding is that SB1 is only good for 10 years, and what year are we at now?
I'm sorry, say that question again?
My understanding is that the SB1 is a 10-year project that the government sent, and I'm not sure if we know where. I think I read it in your report. There was SB1 is only good for 10 years. Anyway, so.
Yeah, that I'm not exactly sure. We certainly can come back with an answer at council. I know that we are, in the resolution, we dictate what year we're in, and I am.
Yeah. Anyway, so that's okay. You can come back later, but I think a lot of the conditions are like the alligator cracking and block cracking and weathering, and those are the conditions where PCI comes in, right?
Right, so our pavement condition index, which is a measurement of the pavement from 0, which is basically nothing left of your asphalt, to 100, which would be a brand new street. When we have our group, and PEI is the other acronym, and that stands for the Pavement Engineering Incorporated, which is the company that we use. When they go out and do the visual inspections, they go out and inspect based on these certain types of degradation that they may see, alligator cracking or block cracking or longitudinal or transverse cracking. So they go out and do those inspections, and each one of those degradations take away from 100. So you start at 100 and you start subtracting the things the things that you see visually, and you come up with a pavement condition index for that roadway segment. So they may see nothing, and so it may be 100. Or they may see a lot of cracking and a lot of potholing and a lot of degradation. So after all the inspections and calculation, that PCI may be 30. So it's evaluation of that pavement condition based on these degradations.
Yeah, and lastly, Mr. Chair, I think we pay a few cents, you know, in the per gallon for SB1 right now. Yeah.
Right. So this commonly referred to as gas tax, right?
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Sure. Thank you again for the presentation. I hope that the public takes an opportunity to look at it. There are lists of neighborhoods or a list of streets that could be, work could be done. Is it within the city attorney, would we be out of line by asking for a slight briefing on where the work is going to be done? Or is it still in the mix?
No, I think that question
Okay.
is within the scope, especially given the information in the resolution.
Thank you.
So we wrote it in the staff report because it's actually an important question. What we're doing tonight and what we're recommending to go to council is part of the transparency process for SB1. It's required, we do it every year. And as the staff report indicates, it is a projection of where we may spend funds on. It's not an exhaustive list of exactly where the funding is going to be spent, because right now, some of that is going to be dictated about the bids that we get. So if bids come in higher, we may not be able to do as much as we anticipated. If bids come in lower, maybe a little bit more. So the list is provided to ensure that we meet the requirements of SB1, which is to say we may spend SB1 funds in these locations. Now, we've generated this list based on our projection for next year of where we believe we're going to be doing paving. So this staff report and this attached list is not a substitution for our projected paving areas and our paving locations next year as an exactness. It is an estimate of where we think we're going to be. So the areas are our neighborhood areas, which we think are would be the Bartolo Square South neighborhood, the Kamala Park neighborhood, the Laconia neighborhood, and then we have several streets throughout different areas of the city. We call it residential resurfacing phase 2, various streets, and those streets are listed: 9th Street, K Street, 3rd Street, and 1st Street, with the limits listed in the staff report. And then we also have identified some of our arterial streets that are proposed for next year: Gonzales, East and West Gonzales, Wenemy Road, and Oxnard Boulevard, segments as identified. So again, these are potential places for us next year, and in order to meet the SB1 requirements, we're listing them as that.
Thank you very much. I'd like to just point out, under the background, the third paragraph, the city has completed hundreds of lane miles of resurfacing projects utilizing the source of funding, and they identify various neighborhoods. There are still people that think that our streets are the worst in the county, and I challenge them to drive around. They may have a problem on the street that they live on, or the method that they go to and from work, or they are simply searching out bad streets, but there's a tremendous improvement in the quality of streets. And with that, I'll make the motion to approve this.
Have you?
I'm sorry, do-
Have you driven Victoria Avenue, Ventura?
Yeah.
If you get off of, from 101 to Telephone,
Yeah,
rough.
and I've also driven Vineyard, which is smooth as a baby.
From Ventura,
Sorry.
forgive me, but I travel that quite often, so. But
Let's not talk about our neighbors.
No, I'm not, Ventura's our neighbors, but however, they. But Mr. Chair, I think it's one of the, Gonzales Road is an arterial, right? And that needs to work desperately, just for information, so.
And it's one of the reasons why we put it on the list for, proposed list for next year. It needs a lot of attention.
Yeah.
There are a lot of residents that are watching that particular stretch like a hawk. And they know that they were promised it would start last July.
That's right.
And they don't really want to hear all the things that have happened to prevent us from going forward. But I appreciate the candor you've exhibited in your report.
And I'm not sure if I can even say that to attorney, our bonding litigation probably has a lot to do with that too, so, which I
Yep.
think is extremely important. People needs to understand that. Yeah.
We can thank certain residents in the city for that.
Yeah, so West and East Gonzales, we're actually done with the design. We're ready to bid. We're just need the funding to construct it. I mean, that's the position that we're in right now.
Thank you. I'll make a motion for this unless there's any more comments. I see no one else has called in, and I see no one coming to the meeting. So
Chair Perrella, we do not have any additional speakers on this item.
thank you very much, City Clerk. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, please vote.
Motion carries 3-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Good
Yes,
report.
thank you. I'd like to thank everybody in Public Works. I mean, this city is, every time I drive around, I see work being done on trees. I see streets currently the red curbs are being painted. There's a lot of things going on.
And Mr. Chair, I know it's not part of the agenda, but anyway, Public Works Week is coming up. And I think we're gonna have some nice equipment behind the council chambers, and Public Works does a lot of work, and I just want to commend you for water and streets and everything you can think of, backflows and so forth. So thank you again, Michael, and Mr. City Manager, and the City Attorney. Thank you.
Do we have any suggestions for items on a future agenda?
I don't know. No.
Okay, just, someone gave me an idea, and I think it's worth exploring. I don't know that we need it on the agenda here. But the retirement, the generational retirements that are going to be happening in Public Works, as people leave, we're going to either be bringing people from other communities, or we're going to hire from within and promote from within. I think that there's an opportunity to possibly go out and to some of the schools. Not everybody's going to go to college, and not everybody wants to go to college. Some of the jobs in public works are very handsomely paying jobs. Water, sewer, refuse, streets, maintenance, all kinds of stuff. And not just public works, other departments in the city of Oxnard. There might be something where we could have like an educational thing for people that are interested. What do they need to do? What's the process? How do I get from point A to point B? Just an idea. And if the kids aren't interested, I'm sure mom and dad will be looking at like, hey, Junior, what are you doing? And I know that happened in my case. So thank you. I have no other items. And with that, unless the city manager has anything or the city attorney, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.